It says recording in progress, so I think we're good. And as I was saying to some of the people who were here earlier, my when I got home from work, my internet was flashing and my power was flashing. So this could be an interesting meeting, but it seems to have been stable the last 30 minutes. Hopefully we'll be okay. But want to welcome everybody tonight for our July meeting. Welcome David Akoubian. It's always great when you're here to do your presentation. We always draw a good crowd, and we'll go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen. All right, hang on a second. Okay, does everybody see the screen?
Yeah.
All right, then we're good to go. So we'll start with our usual club business. We're going to talk a little bit about events and workshops. David will talk, and then we'll do our photo challenge. So as usual, here's the information. If we have any new people online who are not paid members, with some of the extra benefits you have for being a paid member, like free workshops or reduced pricing for special events. If you're interested in joining, the link is at northgeorgiaphotographyclub.com. Lisa couldn't make it tonight, but she asked me to mention Inman Perk up in Gainesville. We have a new exhibit there. It's a new artist show. It's artwork from 6 young new artists. I'm hoping to go there this weekend and take some pictures and post it on our Facebook page for folks to see. But if you're going to be in Gainesville, anywhere the rest of the month, stop by, have a cup of coffee, and take a look at that work. And if you're interested in exhibiting there, contact Lisa Saines. From what I understand, we have a long waiting list. She may be booked for the rest of the year, but sometimes we'll have a spot open up. Somebody will cancel. So feel free to contact her.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Just noticing under dues, I don't see any comment in there about the mentoring, which is another one of the features of paying members.
Okay. Are you saying I need to update this slide?
Possibly.
Okay. Remind me next month. But yeah, that's another thing. We've talked about it at a couple meetings. Paid membership. We now offer a mentoring program for new photographers, matching you up with experienced photographers. We've got a couple people who have taken advantage of that already. Rick is one of our mentors. So if you're interested in that, there is a page on the Facebook page. There's a link on the Facebook page for that. So just go to northgeorgiaphotographyclub.com, and I think it's the members link, which is on the top right of the page. If you can't find it, message me after the meeting and I'll get you to the page. Something else we have coming up that we participated in 2 years ago. It was canceled last year, but they're planning it this year. The North Georgia Camera Club Council shootout. It's going to be October 30th at Chattahoochee Tech in Ackworth. When we participated 2 years ago, that was in Dalton. North Georgia Photography Club had the smallest team there. We only had 6 people, and we still finished 6th out of 12 teams, which I thought was really great. But for those who are not familiar with this is a competition of several photography clubs in North Georgia, and I think Chattanooga area also participates. So what happens is the morning of the shootout, they actually draw 5 different categories, themes like we do in our challenges. So nobody knows what these are going to be. They're randomly selected. They're randomly selected that morning. Then you have time to go out and shoot as many pictures of those themes, come back, edit them, and then we turn them in, and the council goes and they select the winners. In the meantime, they'll have several speakers while they're counting the votes. They had a lot of giveaways 2 years ago. I know they're working on sponsors right now. I know Rick and Hylos are involved, so I don't know if you want to mention anything about that. But we're going to participate in that. When I have more information, I think there's going to be an entry fee, but I know it wasn't that expensive 2 years ago. So we'll post more information when we have it, but I'd love to see more than 6 people show up this year. I think we could really do well. And even if we lose every category, it's a lot of fun.
What I would add, Mike, is it's one way to think of it is it's a scavenger hunt for photos.
Exactly.
So you've got those 5 topics you're running crazy trying to collect, and the rest of your club members are doing it. And you got a couple hundred people running around the town, which is going to be Ackworth this year, trying to find these photographs. And then within your club, there's, winners selected that will be advanced on behalf of the club. And then ultimately you're competing club against club and person against person. It is so much fun. It is just a blast. And I was really sad that we missed the opportunity last year because of COVID, but I'm glad it's back. And the folks that are putting the thing together have done it before. They're pretty experienced at it. Ralph from Cobb is very involved. I think he's actually heading it up now that Kim has stepped aside. So it's a blast. I've told people it's about as much fun as you can have fully clothed. So there's that.
Rick, let me mention the fact that there will be, right now there's 10 clubs going to be involved in it. So a couple of hundred people, and like you said, running around town all the way. And we're going, last I heard, we were talking about it being Cobb and Cherokee counties. So it's a fairly good area, but it just depends on how soon you can get back, because you need to get it back by, well, pretty quick, 3 or 4 hours, and you better be back with your pictures.
Yeah, we got our memory card turned in with about 60 or 90 seconds to spare. So you're editing. I know next time not to spend as much time shooting because you want to edit, or just don't spend as much time editing. You need to pick your favorite pictures quickly, but it's a lot of fun and we all enjoyed it. We had on our team, we had Travis Rode was on our team 2 years ago. He placed in one of the competitions. Angel Sharam, who lives up in Dalton, she placed, and Hi, who I noticed is on here today, she placed. So we had 3 of the 6 people on our team placed, and we finished in 6th place, and we beat some much larger clubs who have participated in this several times. So love to do it again, but like I said, even if we lose out and nobody places it, it's a lot of fun. So when we have more information, we'll post it, but just kind of try to set October 30th on your calendar to know that this is going on. All right. So now we're going to talk about some upcoming trips. We've already alluded to our Milky Way shoot. It was, I guess you could call it successful. We had 30 people show up. Somebody forgot to tell the Milky Way to show up. A few people who lingered there after 11 might have gotten a shot, but we still had a lot of fun. So we're going to try this reshoot. We have the annual Dragon Con parade, which was canceled last year. That is still on. That's going to be on September 4th, and we'll post more information about that. We have a spot that we love to shoot at and get good shots of the parade, and then we usually do some street photography afterwards. That's a really fun day. And then we did the EarthQuest Birds of Prey back in the spring. Dick was speaking to them, and we think we tentatively have a date in October to do it again. I can't see who's on right now. Dick, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on.
All right, if you want to talk a little bit about trips and getting people to make suggestions for us.
Yeah, it's great fun. It's our and 15, 20 minutes to shoot 4 different birds. Probably this time we won't have the California condor, but we will have a horned eagle, a couple of hawks, and an owl, probably something like that. Last time we shot at the Milford family farm. That farm has been sold, so I got to find another venue. But the Milfords are moving to another farm up near Jasper. So, but I haven't talked to them yet, so we may just shoot there. Otherwise, I'm thinking it'll be one of the wineries in North Georgia somewhere. But we're on the calendar for October 23rd. That's a Saturday. Shoot will be late afternoon, like a couple hours before sunset. And at that time of year, sunset will be fairly early. So I'm thinking it'll probably be 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon when this will occur. I haven't got that nailed down yet. But that's the story on that one. And if we want to do it again after that, we can. This time around, there are 10 people who were on the waiting list last time, and it's limited to 20 people. Otherwise, we get in each other's way. So those 10 people will have first shot at it, but then we'll open it up to everybody. Back
And
to you,
then,
Mike.
do you remember what was the fee?
$30 per person.
Okay, and that's something EarthQuest charges. That's not something that we decided.
Yeah,
to
that's
do.
not us, that's them.
So as we get closer to that date, we'll put an order button like we did last time, but we want to make sure we get those 10 people on the waiting list first dibs, since they weren't able to go last time. And if anybody else has any suggestions about trips now or in the fall, and like when we start planning our fall waterfall trip or whatever, contact Dick. We always take suggestions. If you want to shoot somewhere and want somebody to go with you, post it on the page. This Milky Way shoot was originally going to be just me and Rick, and we decided to invite 30 of our closest friends. So you never know. And Rick, did you want to say anything else about the Milky Way?
Yeah, just briefly, I'm going to announce early this week, as soon as Mike teaches me how to do this, I'm going to announce officially, but it'll be Saturday, August 7th will be our reshoot date. Again, weather permitting, it'll be the same kind of thing. If it looks really like there's no way it's going to work, we'll cancel it by 3 o'clock that day. But I'll be sending out an invitation, event notice, I guess, that'll have, once again, the location and the geolocation, if it's easier for you to use that, whatever. And we'll take another shot at it. Somebody today mentioned, Kevin Walsh, who's a club member, I believe, mentioned that he wants to go the week before that, which is July 31st. We're not going to make that an official club date, but for those of you who might be interested in having another day opportunity to go, if you want to try it, it looks like there will be some people maybe interested in going on July 31st. Just catch as catch can. So just so you know.
All right. Hang on a second. I was answering a chat question. I was listening to you, Rick. All right. I know Timmy is in a car driving up in Valdosta. She messaged me that she's going to try to get on. Are you on, Timmy? Can somebody see her? Because if not, I'll have to talk about the workshop.
Mike, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay. Good. I get
Okay,
another break for about 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll try to talk quick while I got signal then. So we have had some pretty successful workshops so far this summer. We got another one coming up. Ben Hines has offered to kind of take his specialty, which is computer nerddom, and help us out with getting your images on social media. So his focus is going to be Instagram, and he's going to start from everything from how to set up an account all the way to things like hashtags and what not to do and what to do. Image quality, what all things you want to say when you're commenting to people online. So he's got a really good, I'm really excited about this. He's got a great agenda lined up on August 12th. We're going to do that via Zoom. So I've been trying to do it every other month, do an in-person and then a Zoom. July was the in-person workshop with the Gibsons doing the portrait. So next month will be Zoom. September, I'm still a little iffy on. So if anybody's got some ideas or wants to do a workshop for September, be sure and contact me.
Yeah, the workshops have been great. I wasn't able to make the portrait one, but I think I've been to all the others, and knowledgeable, learn a lot, and a lot of fun, especially the ones where we're able to be out and shooting these hands-on ones. So that's again, and the workshops are one of the benefits for paid members. Those workshops are free, and occasionally we will have a special event where we may have to charge. When we have one of those, the paid members get first dibs on that, because every time we've had to do that, they've sold out in all the spots have been filled out in like 24, 48 hours. So we definitely want to make sure that the paid members get first dibs on that. And let's see. All right. Thank you, Timmy, and drive safely, and hopefully you can hear the rest of the meeting. Hope you're not driving. You're not the driver.
No, I'm not. I'm not the driver. So we're good.
Okay. And if you do end up losing connection, which you probably will end up doing, this will be on hopefully on YouTube tonight or tomorrow. All right. So now I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let David Akoubian speak. Usually I give a introduction, but I think everybody here knows David. So let me go ahead and let him share his screen. Hang on a second. All right, David, you should be able to share your screen.
All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Here you go. You got it.
All right. Well, thank you again, you guys. I mean, it's always great. I mean, I consider this, Big Canoe's the nearest camera club to my house. But it's very, very small. It's obviously you have to live in Big Canoe or in a nearby community. So I sort of look at North Georgia as my local camera club, and have become friends with a lot of folks in the group. And I always enjoy, being able to present. This is an all new program. I put it together over the past couple weeks here. So there'll be some fresh images, and if there's any questions, by all means, either throw them into the chat. Mike, if you want to monitor the chat, and if you see a question that needs to be addressed right away, just let me know. If not, we'll do them all afterwards. So whatever works best for everybody. So again, this is landscape photography. I feel like I go through phases as to, personally what I'm photographing, either landscapes or wildlife or macro. But I always try to do landscapes on a regular basis, because it's always something that I enjoy just getting out and doing. I get to do a lot of stuff nearby, either in my backyard or just wandering around to some of the waterfalls here in the area. So it's really nice to have, that great stuff around me. So some of the things I want to talk about are the importance of composition and light. This was on the Oregon coast 2 years ago, almost now. We were doing in the Out of Chicago conference, which was the Out of Oregon conference. And this was at a little place called Strawberry Beach. And just obviously the light is what makes this image. And I can't emphasize enough how important light is for your images. But I want to talk about what makes a landscape image successful. A lot of times people, they want to learn composition, and it's probably one of the hardest things to teach, but it's mainly something that the photographer has to do for themselves. I know when I was learning, a lot of times I would just look at a lot of images, and I would have to ask myself, I tell myself I like the image, then I'd have to identify why I like that image, and learning to identify what makes those images nice is really the biggest part of it. But the idea behind it is to get the viewer's attention and control what they look at and how they look at it as they're viewing the image. So the first thing you want to do is obviously give them a place to land visually, and then you want to give them a path to follow through the frame, with other elements or leading lines or curves or whatever the case may be. So, that's what we're going to talk about a lot tonight, that and the lighting, of course. So this is out in the Grand Teton National Park. I think it was a year ago. There's a little place called the Miller House in the National Elk Refuge. And what I did here is my emphasis was going to be obviously on the mountain range, but I wanted to have something in the foreground, being the Miller House. And then I wanted to have the sky. The sky was just so beautiful. I decided to include, the majority of the frame in the sky, even though the Tetons truly are the subject. So I want to talk a little bit about how gear affects what we do in our compositions and in our landscapes as well. I think the idea for landscape photography when it comes to cameras and lenses, I get one of the most popular questions I get is, what kind of cameras do you shoot? I shoot everything. I shoot Sony, Canon, Olympus, Nikon, the works. Because I'm a Tamron professional, I currently shoot what they're producing and manufacturing the most. And currently that is Sony. I love the Sony system. I just got back from Alaska. When I had gone on a trip prior to that, not long before it, carrying the same amount of gear, the same length lenses in my Nikon system, my bag was almost 30 pounds. Changing over to the Sony system with mirrorless, I reduced my bag down to 22 pounds. I go to Iceland here in about 2 months, and as of now, the bag is going to weigh about 17 pounds, which is just phenomenal. And that's going to give me everything from 16 millimeters all the way up to 450 millimeters. So I think that's pretty good. So, mirrorless versus digital SLRs, we won't talk about that a whole lot. I just think that mirrorless is obviously the way of the future. If you're starting to look at camera equipment, there's some good deals on digital SLRs because not a lot of people are manufacturing them anymore. There's not many digital SLR lenses being produced at this point in time. A lot of the major manufacturers have stopped. So it's a good time to start looking at the mirrorless systems. Tripod, I believe that a tripod should go with you everywhere you go. I'm not a big person on hand holding. I just think that a tripod is a good solid foundation for every image, especially with landscapes, because again, I talk about making sure we're in good light. Good light typically means lower light. So to get those good quality still images, you need a good solid base. The other things that I recommend people carry are some type of remote release or understand how to use the self timer on your camera. And then filters. I had my filters here somewhere. I use a set of filters from H&Y. It's a magnetic set of filters that go onto the front of the lens with a drop-in polarizer. If you're looking to get into some filters, just find a good system that you're comfortable with and make sure that you have a circular polarizer, neutral densities, and possibly a graduated neutral density. They also make a night pollution filter that is just phenomenal. I started using it and testing it last year in Moab, and it does a tremendous job with eliminating light pollution or the odd colors you get from light pollution. So if I can make it on August 7th, I'll bring that with me as well and let you guys take a peek at it. So I look at all photography and composition. There are two types of compositions, asymmetrical and symmetrical. Symmetrical simply being bullseye. It's where you've centered your subject. Everything around that subject leads you to the center. So it's a very symmetrical, balanced left to right, top to bottom. The other type of composition, which I favor when I'm doing landscapes, is asymmetrical, where I'm creating visual tension within the frame and I'm using an element to lock your vision and then lead you frame to through the frame to the other subject. A lot of times when you hear, judges talk about the rule of thirds, most people don't understand the rule of thirds is based on asymmetrical compositions, that you've got to create that visual tension in your frame to have a successful rule of thirds. You just can't simply divide the frame into three and not have interest in all three areas. There needs to be some type of interest to carry you through to get a successful image when you're doing that. An example of that, this is Arrowleaf balsam root out in the Grand Tetons. And what I've done is I've taken a very wide angle lens. I think in this case, it was maybe a 20 or a 24 and gotten very close to my subject, which is the flowers in the foreground. And then I just simply lead you through the frame to the mountains and the sky above it. Now, obviously, the rule of thirds here, the bottom 2/3 are more important, or the bottom 1/3. So I've let that dominate and become 2/3 of my frame. But the wide angle photography, the idea behind it, for me, when I learned photography, there was a magazine, there still is, called Arizona Highways. And a guy named David Munch was the photographer that really opened my eyes to ultra wide photography and jamming things into the foreground. This is in Stokesness Peninsula in Iceland. This is Vesterhorn. This is on the little black sand beaches that they've got. And again, I'm literally about 5 inches, 6 inches from this sand dune in the foreground. And I'm just letting your vision lock into that. And then I'm trying to bring in the background as a secondary resting spot for your eyes. And then there's beautiful dunes in the center there, sort of just carry you through the frame. So wide angle photography probably is my favorite. But again, any place that you go, the landscape is going to dictate what you can and can't do. Obviously, at the Grand Canyon, there are spots where you can't use something in the foreground because you're on the edge of a canyon wall. So you'd have to use something else. This is in Acadia National Park last fall. This is some of the big ferns that are there changing colors. And again, I've just simply gotten to a point where I can isolate that one fern. And I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but I've got the separation between the one big fern and the ferns that are around it. Those are one of those things in the attention to detail of your elements that's critical to have a successful image. You don't want the distraction of your element touching something else that can cause the viewer's attention to break. You want to keep that nice and steady as you lead them through the frame. And then, of course, the birch trees in the background there. Just a beautiful place. Is in the Sur de Mont area of Acadia National Park. Just one of my favorite places to go. So a standard lens, when I talk about ultra wides, I'm typically looking at anything wider than a 28 millimeter lens is what I consider ultra wide angle. A standard lens for me is anything that's about 35 millimeters up to about 70 millimeters. And I think it's also something that's critical to keep in your bag. I love zoom lenses now. I didn't ever used to shoot with zoom lenses. I used to carry all primes, but the zoom lenses, the quality of them have become so good that there's no reason to carry 10 prime lenses when you can carry 2 or 3 zooms. It's just really done a great job. And, you know, when you look at some of the distortions that you used to get with lenses, you know, Lightroom and Photoshop have done a great job of getting those lens profiles in there that it simply corrects it automatically for you. So it's great to have, you know, software that's going to match whatever lens you're using. This is with a 50 millimeter lens a couple years ago down in, this is in East Point, Florida, just outside of St. George and Apalachicola. And I just simply used a little bit wider of an f-stop, but I slowed the f-stop. I mean, I slowed the ISO down enough that I wanted to get a little bit of motion blur in the flag itself. This was just after a hurricane. And it was kind of interesting as we drove into town, everything was just decimated and destroyed. But this one flag that was tattered and torn was just hanging on a post. And I thought it was kind of a neat image. This is in Apalachicola itself. Just a 50 millimeter lens, again, looking at a boat that is no longer there. A place like Apalachicola is beautiful because it's the forgotten coast. And you see all these great images that are made of these dilapidated boats that are there. Well, the state of Florida decided a couple of years ago that they were going to give Apalachicola about $30,000 to clean up all these dilapidated boats and get rid of them. They did it without talking to any photographers, obviously, because it was such a disappointment to get down there and find there were no boats down there to photograph anymore. But, you know, they're getting there again because they've stopped oystering for now. Delicate Arch in Arches National Park. Again, this is just a 50 millimeter lens and just the LaSalle Mountains in the background. So telephoto lenses. When you look at an ultra wide angle lens, the purpose of that ultra wide angle lens, like with those flowers in the mountains, is it gives the scene a visual decompression. It makes the things in the foreground look exceptionally large in relationship to the things in the background. And that's that decompression factor. It makes you feel like you're much further away from something than you are. On the flip side of that is a telephoto lens, which compresses the scene. It tends to bring things visually closer together and almost give you a distorted view as to how big the relationship between one thing and another one is. So I like to use that telephoto lens when I'm trying to emphasize a foreground and use my background as nothing more than complementary for that scene. Now, this is down in St. George Island, using a telephoto lens and then just monitoring the movement of the moon, moving back and forth until I could compress that lighthouse with the moon lining up with the glass in the back. Again, just being patient, just help. Hang on, somebody's trying to call me. Let me hang that up. This is from my recent trip to Alaska. This is on the back of a boat. This is in Resurrection Bay. It's called, oh gosh, I'm trying like Spire Cove. They had these beautiful sea stacks. And as we approached, I just took out the 500mm lens and, did some images, they gave that compression feeling that the stack was a lot closer to the background mountain than it was. And it was easy to, even at f8, which this image was, it gave me enough depth of field in the foreground and just enough detail in the background to give that feeling that you could see what was there. And when I'm shooting the long lenses and on stuff like this, I really enjoy using f8 versus, f2.8 or f4, because I like to have some detail in the background to give it a sense of scale and a sense of place. So what is the difference, again, sort of when you're looking at wide angle versus telephoto? And this is why I love zooms. This is a horrible image, don't get me wrong. This is in here for a reason though. This is with a 16 to 300mm lens. And I was doing a workshop in Grand Teton National Park, May a couple years ago. And we were set up because we were really hoping those clouds that are lit up a little bit were really going to light up and we would get that reflection in the Oxbow Bend here. But the problem was the wind picked up, we lost the reflection, but there was probably 50 or 60 people that were on the hillside. 10 of those were with my group. And for about probably 30 to 45 seconds, there was this magic light in this scene that without having the ability to simply zoom in, there's no way you could have gone to your camera bag, changed the lens, recomposed. So this was the scene we had. The magic light happened, zooming in and simply capturing the light hitting the backside of the Grand. So if you go back to this image, this is just this little area to the upper left side where the range is just peeking over Signal Mountain there. So that's the light hitting the backside of the Grand. I really emphasize when we do our workshops, a lot of times Tamron sends cases of lenses for us to use. And I try to make sure that people get a versatile zoom lens, even if they're not used to shooting it and putting it on just for this situation. There's no way you could have run and gotten a 300mm lens or a 200mm lens and changed your lens and been able to capture that light, because the sun dipped behind the clouds and that was over pretty quick. This is in the Hasita Head Lighthouse in Oregon, in a foggy morning or evening. I can't remember which one this was. But again, this was with a telephoto lens. This was sitting at, this was a 28-200. So this was 28mm. And then simply taking that lens without having, because when it's foggy, you get moisture. You take a lens off, you're going to get moisture on your sensor, and that can cause a lot more problems. Having the ability to have an all-in-one zoom like this simply allows you to zoom in and then get detailed shots of the lighthouse itself. So again, you can see it's a totally different feel in the images between the two, 28 versus 200. So if you're not using those telephoto zooms, definitely take a look at it, because it's well worth it. So let's talk about those elements that I referred to and the leading lines. Again, these are what puts your compositions together. I was a painter before I was a photographer, and had the great fortune of studying under some of the best, if not the best, photographers in the world for several years. And every one of them had the same philosophy in mind, that, you know, you had to control the viewer as they looked at your frame. That's the whole idea of a successful composition. In this situation, this is in Grand Teton. This is the John Moulton Barn. And these aren't fence posts to me. These are elements. When I look at something, I find an element, and then I find elements to complement and to leave space that will lead you through the frame. So what I've simply done is, the first thing that your eye jumps onto is a super sharp fence post in the foreground, and then you move through the snow and you eventually work your way back to the barn. So it's all about elements leading you through how you want to control the viewer's look. Sparks Lane, you've seen probably tens of thousands of images. If you've been to the Smokies and Cades Cove, this is that road. This is just, I mean, leading lines. You've got the road, you've got the fences on the sides, you've got the trees forming an archway for you. Everything about this image takes the viewer's attention and leads you straight down that road, and you want to find out what's there. What I purposely did is I went and created a radial filter down here in the very bottom of that road, and then I took my dehaze slider and I brought it back in the other direction to make it even more mysterious and make it even hazier. Because I want that mystique. I want the viewer to want to walk down that road to see what's around that corner or around that little bend in the road there. So that's the idea of leading lines as well. White Sands National Park in New Mexico, Alamogordo. Pretty obvious. I've got leading lines in the foreground, and I've got my curves in the back up there, just sort of leading you through the frame. This is in Sur de Mont again. This is the trail that takes you back to the back. And again, it's simple composition. I'm using this just to lead you through. Again, I've created that little radial filter. This time, instead of using dehaze, I used a little bit dehaze, and I used some Gaussian blur in that, just to give it a feeling of the mystique that's down that trail. And again, encourage you to not only visually, but hopefully physically want to walk down that trail as well. This is at Dix Creek Falls. This was just a couple weeks ago, actually. And, you know, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to use the leading lines of not only the river that goes around to the left and the curve of the shore, but the log that goes off to the right, and the bank leads you up to the waterfall. And then the one stick that would almost be a distraction, but I think that it's just enough that it also points to that waterfall as well. So subtle leading lines and elements that can simply take you into that frame. Again, there's other things in this frame besides zooming in the waterfall that catch your attention. And that's what I want to do in the images. This is in Secret Canyon outside of Page, Arizona. I think I put this in one of the little recent themes on the online thing with the Sandy was the theme, I think. But this is just the Navajo sandstone, the lights hitting it just right. What do you call these things? The little tumbleweed. You have a Native American guide when you go into these things. You don't move anything, but the Native American guide said, you know, it would look really cool if I put this tumbleweed on this shelf. So he put the thing on the shelf. We did some images, then he took it down and put it where it was. So just kind of to me, one of my favorite images, because it really emphasizes how leading lines take you into your subject and what the lighting can do to your leading lines as well. This is in Jekyll Island. This is on Driftwood Beach. And again, it's all about a foreground element, just grabbing your attention with that foreground element. This is not a dead seal or a sea lion, it's a log. Someone wondered why, you know, there was a dead sea lion in the picture before. And I felt bad because I never realized it looked like a dead critter in the foreground. But just a nice slow exposure, allowing that water to flow around it just even makes those lines a little bit smoother, taking you through the frame. Yes, I was laying in horse poop to get this image, but sometimes it's worth it when you've got a double rainbow over horses. Again, this is nothing more than just the simple elements of a horse in the foreground. And then that bright color is what you eventually take your eyes to. But just studying the frame, you have to get your viewer interested in what's in the frame. They have to want to see what's there. They have to want to go from point A to point B to point C. That's how you control your viewer. So one thing that I am really big on in my images is the use of repetition, shapes and patterns, how you can, get the viewer's attention in the foreground, then through repetition, lead them into the background to see that secondary subject. Another thing is negative space. I live in a world of negative space. Some judges absolutely hate negative space because they just said, up, there's only one little thing in the frame, too much negative space. Negative space is when it works against your composition. But there are many times that the most simple of compositions are the best compositions. And that's when negative space is highly important and critical for your image. So negative space can be everything. It can be positive in the aspect that it does everything to take the viewer's attention to your simple subject. So keep that in mind as we look at some of the images. So repetition, this is the Patriarch tree in Grand Teton National Park. And if you look at the tree, there's 3 tips of the tree that sort of stick out, the bristlecone pine here, or the lodgepole pine, can't remember which one it is. But then it almost echoes the patterns of the mountain behind it. And this tree, if you've never been there, you virtually cannot find it. It's listed on all the guide maps as Jenny Lake Loop Road. But the old Jenny Lake Loop Road used to run just to the left of this. When they moved that road 30 years ago or 35, 40 years ago, they never really changed the description. You can find some ways to get to it, but it's about a mile hike from the road, and that deters a lot of people. But it's still one of my favorite places to go photograph in the Tetons. So this is up in Acadia National Park. As I wandered through, I start to look at unique patterns and shapes, and I saw this rock that mirrored the shape of the trees in the background. And what I loved is the granite had these nice strong lines that took me around the tree in the foreground in the mirrored shape and pattern of the tree in the background. Then I had these nice lines in between the two that simply took me from point A to point B. So that rule of thirds, that asymmetrical composition, is done using the repetition of pattern and shape in a mirror situation in this case. Excuse me, just needed to drink something there for a second. So repetition, patterns and shapes, negative space. This is on Grovant Road in Kelly Grovant Road in Tetons again. And I wanted this tree in the foreground. At first, I was just going to have it by itself. And I did some images, but as the fog started to move out, I really noticed those trees in the background. So I waited until it got the right amount of visual visibility on the trees in the background. And then I moved to a point where the separation between this tree in the foreground and the tree below it to the right, I had to make sure there's separation again, because they're only separate elements if they're not merged together, if they're not touching each other. So when you're going to have these elements, it's crucial to make sure that they're not merging with something in the frame. So I just simply waited, focused on the foreground. Didn't matter what my f-stop was at because the background was going to be out of focus anyway. This is a little yellow house in Iceland. This is just outside of the Jokersrolon, the Glacier Lagoon, as they call it. But this is just by our hotel. And we were having to flee Iceland in February of 2020 because of a storm that was coming in. As we were loading up our van, we saw this, and we asked the guide, can we just take 10 minutes and photograph this house? It was just absolutely just a beautiful situation for us. So this is negative space at its best. This is simplicity. There is nothing in this frame besides one tree, whiteout conditions, and snow. I would never enter this in a contest that I didn't know who the judge was going to be, because they would hammer this. And I never enter contests, by the way. I just don't ever do it because I photograph for me first and foremost. And with this image, I simply want that tree to be the subject and nothing detract from it. So that's why I really included a lot of the landscape around it, but just made sure there was no other elements in there to detract from it. So negative space can be your friend. And I showed this image probably to the club before. I was laying on the beach in St. George Island, just wanting to photograph the Earth's shadow just before the sun rose that morning. This puddle that's in front of me, I'm using a 16 millimeter lens or 15 millimeter lens. The puddle from where I'm at to the end of it is only about 5 feet away. This guy came down here and started fishing to the left of the frame, saw me and immediately apologized. He asked if he was in the way. And I realized that he added a whole different element to the image. And I asked him just to stay there, but don't move. Even though it was like a 1 or 2 second exposure, he stood still for probably 2 or 3 minutes. And I did send him a copy of this, and he gets to send it to all of his friends. But just to me, again, this is negative space. This is graphic imagery. So cityscapes, nothing wrong with cityscapes. It's still considered a landscape. This is the St. Louis Arch with a 15 millimeter lens, just as close as I could be to get the top of the arch and as much as the sides as I could, and then the Capitol building back in the background. This is from the Brooklyn Bridge and Manhattan, from the opposite side of Manhattan from New York City. This is on the right-hand side of the bridge looking in. This is from the left-hand side of the bridge looking in. And when I'm photographing cityscapes, I will put my my white balance, not necessarily in the camera, but when I process it, I'll move it to a more magenta because when I'm trying to do a fluorescent setting, I try to get more magenta in there because the pinks and everything appear just a little more colorful than you would with daylight balance or with tungsten balance. So I'll go ahead and I'll just put it set for fluorescent, which again is a magenta filter. So one thing that I've really gotten into doing is, for several reasons, I start to do over the past 10, 15 years, more and more environmental images of wildlife. I don't necessarily want just close-ups of wildlife. I want to show the environment. For me, it's a more marketable image, number one. Number two, though, it shows sort of where the animal lives, why it does the things that it does. And because I do a lot of naturalist self-study, I like to know the behavior of the wildlife and the animals that I'm photographing. So I include a lot of the landscape around it. So you start to think, is it a landscape image or is it a wildlife image? This is a pod of orca in Resurrection Bay. And I purposely put them at the bottom of the frame, zooming way out to include a lot of that rocky coastline. I cued the birds to fly into the frame, perfect acting birds that fly in there, just to balance that frame out for you. But again, is it a wildlife image or is it a landscape image? I think it's a little bit of both. This is in Lake Clark in Chinitna Bay, Alaska. This is one of the brown bears feeding on sage. And this is just at sunset, which happened to be at 11:45 at night this past June. But I love the way the light hit the bear and rim lit the bear. To me, it's an image of a bear, but at the same time, it really makes for a nice landscape image as well. So nightscapes, I love nightscapes. That's why I really wanted to make that thing the other night. It would have been a lot of fun. I do a couple workshops for out of Chicago. One of them was out of Moab. And I do a lot of nightscape workshops for different groups. This is Turret Arch. Being from Georgia, you guys can all relate to this. When I say Turret Arch, it sounds like I'm saying TURD Arch. I have to really slow down my talk when I'm speaking to people from the rest of the country and make sure that I make it TURRET Arch. Because if you tell them Turret Arch and you've got this pile of rocks in the foreground, it doesn't go over as well. So it is Turret Arch in Arches National Park. This is a boat that they have since removed in Apalachicola on 2 Mile. Beautiful little place. And there was a question the other day in the group about photographing in the wintertime. My favorite time to do nightscapes is late October, early November, because you do have the meteor showers. You've got the visibility of the galactic core. That's as soon as it gets dark enough to photograph, that core is there. So you're not having to stay out till 10:30, 11, 12, 1, 2 in the morning. You can actually photograph that core just after the sun is actually set and it's dark enough. This is back in Arches, Balanced Rock. This is the Donna Kay and Cape Sandblast. This was just after sunset. And this is in Arches National Park. This is my little juniper tree. And I don't know, you guys, I'm sure everybody knows the formula for nightscapes. If not, I can just go over it real quick. If someone hits Mike up with the chat question, I can go over the settings that I use. Well, I can just do it real quick. I shoot in manual mode when I'm photographing nightscapes. Manual mode, I start at ISO 3200, f2.8, and 30-second exposure. And I'll make adjustments from that point. And I'm using my widest lens, 15, 16, 17 millimeter lenses. So 30 seconds, the widest aperture. F2.8, 30 seconds, ISO 3200. And then I manually focus. I have some loops. I don't have any sitting right here beside me, but the way that I focus is just before it gets dark. As soon as Jupiter or one of the bright stars come up, I focus while there's still some light. I zoom in on that star and I take my loop and I put it on the back of my LCD screen. I focus and then I make sure that I'm in manual focus from that point on, and I don't touch the focus ring. I'll do an image or two, and if I need to make an adjustment, I will, but I always focus on just one of the stars. And that's how you control your focus when you're doing night skies. So if you're ever interested in doing this for a living, marketability is where you make your money. I make very little money on landscape images. I find that people, especially when you're trying to sell an image to market for someone to visit a place, you've got to include people in your frame and, get a modeling release or make sure that they're not identifiable, one of the two. But typically if it's a public place, it doesn't matter anyway. This is out at North Window Arch. We'd gotten there at 5 o'clock in the morning. Sunrise was at like 7:30. Just before sunrise, all these people appeared and it was really frustrating. But as soon as the light got good, everybody walked away, got a couple images, and then someone walked into the frame. And I loved it because they were silhouetted perfect. Then she realized we were on the hill behind her. She apologized profusely that she was in our way. I said, no, please stand there. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a picture of you. She did. Then I holler back and forth. I got her email address, gave her my email address, and I sent her one of these pictures. So, and always, if you promise someone you're going to send them a frame, make sure that you do it, because it just makes it so people react more positively towards photographers. And you want to do everything you can to make sure that you always keep that relationship with them. Last year, I was hired during the pandemic. I was hired to go out to Triangle X Ranch, where we do all of our workshops. By the way, just shameless marketing. We're doing one in January, and I've got a couple spots for my workshop in May. If you're interested, just let me know. But I was hired by them to come out and do their promotional photography for not only that year, but from there on after. And I got up early in the morning. We went out with a group of riders and made these images with the Tetons in the background. I don't know about you, but even if I didn't ride horses, I would want to go to this place and ride horses, because that's beautiful light on the mountains. What beautiful scenery. They also offer float trips. So I did 2 different days where I was in a chase boat following this raft going down the Snake River. And this was one of the particular areas that, for me was the most photogenic, and being able to capture some of the images, really made it kind of neat. But adding people to the frame makes it extremely marketable. This is the lodge at Triangle X. And again, there are people inside, and it just makes you feel like you want to go there in the middle of the winter, particularly January 3rd through the 7th of 2022. But it's just another, again, they use it for their marketing all the time. They've purchased it from me on several occasions. So intentional camera movement, ICMs, you either love it or you hate it. It's a landscape technique that people either shake their head at. Well, if they shook their head, they would get it. But it's where you simply slow your shutter speed down enough when the situation is right, and you simply move your camera in the direction of your dominant lines. I like to use about 1/2 to 1 second, typically never slower than about a 30th of a second or faster than 30th of a second. And I'm simply using the aspen trees to give me some dominant lines through here. And this is up in the Cerdamont area of Acadia National Park. Very little movement is needed. You're just shaking your camera about 1/4 of an inch. And I use it on the tripod. I don't do it handheld. The tripod controls your up and down movement a little bit better. It doesn't give you the left to right movement as much. This is up in Skilac Lake in outside of Sterling, Alaska. This is down in Tate's Hell near Apalachicola, Florida. And I loved the burned trunks because it was just enough to break up that brighter green as you work into the gray part of the trees themselves. So I'm going to just show some pictures and talk about them a little bit. Often it is all about the light. I've shown you the elements. We'll look at the elements as we get into these frames, but I want you to pay attention to how the light affects what you're doing. You know, early morning, late afternoon, or a cloudy day, those are the times that I love to go out and do landscapes because, you know, either I want a lot of contrast or no contrast at all. And this is from Davidson Arabia State Park over in, what is it, Covington or Conyers, wherever it's at. They use this image. The Nature Conservancy used this image for one of their annual reports. And honestly, without this light, this is a horrible scene. The fog and the light is what makes this image. It just was a beautiful morning. This is Boulder Beach in Acadia National Park. And I loved just that minute amount of light hitting, creating that leading line all the way to the frame out to Otter Cliffs. You know, again, this is about that warm light, slowing the exposure down to about 30 seconds to create just a smooth reflection in the water, or as smooth as you can get on the ocean. But that light is what makes the difference here. It's what creates the line for you. Those foreground elements of the big boulders, then the light leads you all the way out. Cloudland Canyon State Park, just on a cloudy day. My favorite time and my preferred time to ever photograph waterfalls is actually when it's either drizzling or extremely cloudy. And this particular day, it was drizzling a little bit. This was last year, just before I went to Iceland. We hiked down into the canyon and everything had a nice coating of water on it. Using a circular polarizer with a slight neutral density filter allowed me to slow the water down just enough, but take the glare and reflection off of the rocks. So waterfalls on a non-sunny day are my favorite. And again, if you look at this rock right here, I've made sure there's separation between the bottom of the fall and the rock itself because I want those elements separate. This is in Dead Horse State Park out in outside of Moab, Utah. This is last light, just hitting the very tips of the rocks. I've left just enough detail to let you see what's there. But to me, it's that warm light. That's what makes the image. And I tried to balance it a little bit left to right the best I could. This is in Iceland. This is on Diamond Beach. And these are these big, huge rocks. I remember a couple of years ago, I don't know if you guys remember the story of a lady sitting on one of these rocks and then getting washed out, pulled out to the ocean, and someone had to rescue her. I was there 2 days before she was there, and these are the rocks that she was sitting on when she got sucked out to sea. Luckily, there was somebody there that went ahead and grabbed her off the rock and brought her in. Iceland is very different than the US is. Here we put fences up and we discourage you to put your life into harm's way and everything else. But in Iceland, hey, once you enter the landscape, you're a part of it. You get sucked out to sea, it's on you. They have a warning sign at the beach that just says, hey, it's dangerous. You can get sucked out to sea. And that's as far as their liability goes. So they allow you to take risk, but at the same time, get beautiful images. We're going to be going back to Iceland in March of 2022 on the southern coast. So I'm really looking forward to those big ice formations again. This is on Diamond Beach. And the idea behind this is you wait for the wave to come in And then as the wave is going out, you do like a 1 second exposure with your lens fairly close to the big rock formations or ice formations. And then the water that's going out over a 1 second exposure creates these beautiful leading lines. Just phenomenal to do. Just like I could do it all day. Another one from the same beach, just a little bit later in the morning. When you're there in February, March, the great thing is that sunrise isn't until about 9 o'clock in the morning. So you get to sleep in a little bit. Sun sets at about 4 o'clock, but the sun never gets about more than 15 to 30 degrees off of the horizon. So you have great light all day while you're there and you're shooting. You know, when there's not clouds, the light is just incredible. You can shoot literally all day. So just that's a great time to be there for the landscapes. The sun is always going to be to the southern area because just the way that the season's set up. This again is on Driftwood Beach in Jekyll Island. I simply made sure that I got that sun star just in the center of these little branches. So you can just look in and you can see just a little bit of spires that are there, but using elements to capture something in the foreground or in the background is what I really look for. It's the attention to detail that can really make a difference in an image. This is lupine in the Pilgrim Creek area of the Grand Teton National Park. And usually the road is closed because of the grizzly bears. This is 399 and Blondie's favorite hangout, but we just happened to be there this day and get these images. The next day they closed the road down for a month. So you couldn't have gotten that image. This is in one of the ice caves and you just simply go in. It's so easy to photograph there. You literally just point and shoot. You set your camera on aperture priority, F11, F16, and focus, you know, just into the foreground of the image and then click. Everything is just, it's perfect. The lighting is absolutely great in there. It just gives you a perfect image. It's like the slot canyons in Utah. It's the less you think about it, the easier it is to photograph. But I love the light coming through the blue rock, the blue ice there. This is just another one of the ice caves that we visit. Mesa Arch. Usually to get this image, we actually stayed there all night. We went out and we photographed the Milky Way above it. It's become one of these great places to shoot. It's so iconic, but it's also one of these places people hate to go to shoot because if sunrise is at 7 o'clock, you've got to get there no later than about 3 o'clock in the morning to get one of these areas that are about 20 to 25 feet wide. That's all this arch is 20 or 25 feet wide. If you don't get there early in the morning, you know, you're going to be in the second, third, fourth row or way off to the side. It's almost become a mess. It's one of these that it's great to photograph it, but it's become such a hassle to go there and photograph. But I still, if you ever get to Canyonlands National Park, I strongly recommend make a night of it, get there, go out, photograph the Milky Way. You do about a third of a mile hike in the dark, but the trail is really easy to find. It's absolutely incredible to see. It's gorgeous. Definitely it's worth it, but just be prepared for the crowds. Gosh, this is somewhere up in North Georgia, I think. It's Minnehaha Falls or something like that. One of my favorite places. I love going there. Whenever I'm testing lenses or cameras, this is one of the places I go to. And again, I'm standing in the creek. I always either take my shoes off or I take some mucks up there with me and I get in the creek because it gives me a more asymmetrical composition in balancing it left to right. Cunningham Cabin in Teton National Park. This is all about the light, the little crescent moon up here just poking through. This was some wildfires that were there that were giving it just a little bit of haze, but just made the light just incredibly gorgeous, very, very warm right at sunset. So this is Mount Rundle. And this is one of those times that having a zoom lens made the difference between getting an image and not getting an image. I was out there by myself. This is up in the Vermilion Lakes outside of Banff, Canada. And I'd gone out that morning to photograph and I was going to get the mirrored reflection of Mount Rundle and the other mountains behind it. And it had snowed heavily the night before. And as I was setting up, there was some nice color in the sky, but not a lot. but I noticed the snow started blowing off the top of the mountain. So as I saw that, I said, I wonder if the light is going to be in the right position to backlight that and make it look like fire almost. So I went ahead and I put on my longer lens. It was a 70 to 200. And as soon as the light hit it, it lasted maybe 20 seconds. And there was 2 or 3 workshop groups that were there. I was by myself. You know, I'm with this longer lens in their mind because I already use an ultra wide. And I captured this, and a couple of the people came over and said, you know, were you photographing a moose? You know, what's out there? Why the long lens? And I showed them the back of the camera, and they said, you know, we never even saw it. So pay attention to what's there. You know, look at little intricacies in the landscape to find stuff like this. This is Peyto Lake. They often call it Wolf Lake because the shape of the wolf. Just luckily, one of the clouds lined up right where the eye of the wolf would be. But this is the light that you get there to start studying how it's going to shape up. You know, to me, I love this image, but it's all about the light hitting the mountain. So 20 minutes later, the light starts to light up the mountain, recompose a little bit, and get the final image that I'm looking for. So simply get there during this light and photograph your final images during that light. This is Reynisfjarðar Beach, which is the black sand beach in Iceland. These are these basalt cliffs and the sea towers, the sea stacks behind it. And the light is coming up. It's been up for about 30 minutes at this point, but it's really causing some nice reflection of light onto the sea stack behind it. But I'm using the basalt cliff in the foreground to block that out, you know, block out the light and silhouette it and just create a pattern and shape. Grand Teton National Park. This is at Schwabacher Landing. This isn't the iconic location. This is almost from the parking lot. But this particular morning, I was really excited because I really study clouds. I use an app called Clear Outside, and Clear Outside predicts the amount of high clouds, medium clouds, and low clouds. And for sunrises and sunset, you want high clouds. If you have low clouds, you want them to the opposite side of the sunrise. And in this particular situation, the high clouds lit up first. As it got down a little lower, it lighted up the low clouds, which is also known as cloud inversion. So I got 2 sunrises. I got this beautiful pink light underneath the cloud, and then I got the beautiful light on the mountains. After we did this image and the cloud sort of dissipated a little bit, move over to the right a little bit, and then just capture, you know, just a beautiful, you know, panoramic image of the Tetons themselves. But it's all about the light. This is Scipio Creek in Apalachicola, Florida. And, you know, like I said, I use Clear Outside in addition to some other apps. But I'm a firm believer if you don't go out, you never get the image. I didn't do that the night you guys did the Milky Way. Shame on me, because you guys got some beautiful stuff. But this particular morning, it was pouring down rain at the house we were staying at. But it said that it was going to clear up right before sunrise. I made myself get out of bed. I went down to Scipio Creek, and this was the reward for me the morning I went up and did this. So, you know, I paid attention to the apps versus, you know, my lazy self not wanting to get out of bed. This is in Shore Acres in outside of Coots Bay, Oregon. And just they predicted these massive waves coming in and crashing on the shore. If you look to the right-hand side, I included people in it for the perspective. You can see these waves are easily 200 to 300 feet tall as they crash, because you can see the tiny people over there to the right. Fast shutter speed just to capture that, set the contrast really high, bring those blacks down, bring the shadows down, just to really get that contrast in the waves. First light at Snake River Overlook in Teton, Grand Teton National Park. It's all about the light. So the morning I showed you with the people riding in front of the mountain, we almost missed that shot because one of our horses got loose and we had to wrangle the horse. And as we were wrangling the horse, this light happened in the meadow or in the pasture across the street. Luckily, they caught the horse. They were taking it up to saddle it up. I got to do these images. Then I rode down to meet them at the river. And this was some of my favorite images that I did during the entire week that I was there doing the images for them. Just beautiful. This was in May, or this was in June. We do a workshop there every year in July. This is Arches National Park, Balanced Rock. Learn weather, study weather. I always had learned years ago that when you've got a storm that's coming from the west, moving to the east, and it's in the afternoon, there's a really good chance, if it's a distinct storm front, once it passes over you, you're going to get a rainbow in the opposite direction. So we saw this. We drove over to Balanced Rock really quick, threw the 15mm lens on, boom, the double rainbow appeared. It was gone in about 30 seconds, but we were there. We were able to get the shot. This is just a beautiful light. Storm clouds to me make the most beautiful light. This is a handheld panoramic image. This is 9 frames that I did vertically stitched together as a storm front was moving through early in the morning in Grand Teton National Park. I think that's it. Yep. Thank you, guys. Here is all my, oh, we got a storm coming in. This is all my contact information. I give you this information for several reasons. I'd love for you to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, wherever the case may be. I try to do an image every day, and I try to make it educational. I share it on the 2 North Georgia pages. I do the occasional video still on YouTube. We do a lot of videos on Venmo now that we do through our little premium group that we've got. But I give you my email information. So if you ever have a question, you're getting ready to go somewhere, and you've got questions about where you're going, if I've been there, I'll share all the information in the world with you that I can. I don't have secret locations unless it's on private property, and I just can't give you that info. My website, bearwoodsphotography.com, and I do workshops with a guy named Cecil Holmes, nature and focus photography workshops. We just added a bunch of workshops. We'd love to see you in a few of them. Going to Alaska twice next year, June and September, it looks like. Going to Iceland in February, and then we're going to do Iceland again in July of 2023. So any questions come through while I was doing it, or did everybody get all the knowledge they were trying to learn?
Everybody was watching intently. No questions came through. I was going to say, with asking David questions several years ago, and I didn't know David that well. I was in Knoxville, and they had the shutdown, the government shutdown, and I was just trying to figure out where to go because I couldn't go to the Smokies, and I just called him up and said, "Where can I go?" He gave me a few spots.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that's one thing is, when I learned photography, again, it was from the best people in the world: John Shaw, Art Wolf, Galen Rowell, Brian Peterson, and I learned from them early on that they're regular people and they enjoy sharing the information with other photographers. And I always looked at it and I said, that I wanted to make sure that no one ever said I didn't share information, because I think it's important that we have a craft. And as an instructor, it's important to me to share that information with people. And I remember one time I was out photographing with John Shaw, and we'd been on the road for about 3 months, and we were in the Superstition Mountains in Arizona. And a family came up and handed John a point and shoot and said, "Could we trouble you to have you take a picture of us?" And I'm thinking to myself, if these people only knew the most renowned professional nature photographer in the world is taking their family portrait. And he was just as humble as could be, took the picture, gave him back the camera and said, now let me know if that's okay, because, I included a little bit more of the mountain so you could see where you were at. And I was thinking, wow, this is just a regular guy that is just phenomenal. So I will always do my best to do the same. And I'm not even famous. Any questions?
Got a lot of
No
thank
question
you.
here. Just thank you for a wonderful presentation and
Oh,
beautiful images and great information. Thank you.
thank you. I owe you $20. Okay. But there were,
Maybe I
there were
owe
no
you-
witnesses. Yeah, there were no witnesses to that.
Yeah, I'll look for the check in the mail, David.
Yep, I'll put it in there tomorrow.
David, great job as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you
Thank
very
you, guys.
much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
I look forward to the day we can all look at each other face to face again. And I know until then, it's It's been a different year for every one of us. You know, the past year and a half, it's resulted in me building a studio for Zoom presentations and video work. So had to do something with my time when I couldn't travel. But it's kind of neat. I've got a permanent little setup in here now. So
It's good.
It's definitely been a whole different world. And like we were talking at the beginning, hopefully we'll be able to meet in person soon for meetings, but at least we're doing a lot of trips and able to get together for that. In the meantime, still trying to keep up with our minimum 1 trip per month. And sometimes we'll do more than that. So,
you know, it's been an interesting thing for me as I started traveling again, really heavily back in May. And you can see the relief on people's faces when they're able to get out and do stuff. And fortunately, being in Alaska, being in Wyoming for almost a month between the two, you know, seeing smiles on people's faces. I mean, golly, when you had a mask on, you never saw if someone was smiling, if they were, you know, had a sneer in their face or what it was. But gosh, it is such a great feeling to see smiles on people's faces. You know, that's really a relief. But you know, there's a couple people that didn't do real well during the pandemic, and they're just grumpy as could be out there. So just I always try to go out of my way to say, you know, hey, you know, sort of make them feel like, you know, it's back to normal somewhat. So just be patient with them as well.
all right. Well, there's a storm overhead in Gainesville, so I'm gonna go ahead and start the challenge. So hopefully we don't get cut off before the storm hits. David, you're welcome to stay and vote if you'd like. Thank you so much for your presentation again. And let me
Thank you.
share my screen again. All right. So these are the themes we've had each month. For July, our theme is blur. So I kind of like when you were showing those camera motion shots, David. So our theme is blur. The rules: 1 image per person. The image must be less than 2 years old. We don't do composites for the monthly theme. We do allow composites for the weekly, but not for the monthly. You must be a paid member. You must be attending the meeting, but we do allow you to miss 1 meeting per year. At the end of the year, we're going to add up all the points and announce our photographer of the year. And this year, the photographer of the year is going to win $100. We award points for 1st through 5th place. So first place gets 5 points, second place gets 4 points, and so on. When it's time to vote, you're going to send an email and you're going to put in there first, second, and third, your favorite choices. So if image number 6 is your favorite, you put first, 6, second, 5, and so on. Don't vote for the same photo multiple times. As you're voting, think about whether or not the images fit the theme. Against the theme is blur. And since Lisa wasn't able to make it tonight, you're going to send the votes to me and I'll go ahead and tally them. I used to do that before Lisa did. So that's my email address. Don't send it to everybody. But it's m.sussman95@gmail.com. So that's where you're going to send your votes tonight. And let's get started. I think we had 12 images this month.
Mike, what's the 95 stand for? Is that the year you were born?
That's when the Braves won the World Series.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, golly,
So I haven't
that
had
makes
to
it
change it. It's safe. I don't know if I'll ever have to change it.
Sorry for the interruption.
Nobody's ever asked that before. And I've been using that for probably 20 years. So, all right. Image number 1. And I just lost my, okay. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. 4. 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And I'll go through them again backwards and then one last time forward. So we'll start at number 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And one more time, just a little bit faster. Starting with number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So again, you're sending the votes to me tonight, m.sussman95@gmail.com. If you forget to write that down, you can message me after the meeting. I have that it's about 8:30 now. So get the votes to me by 8:45. And I will try to post the winners tonight or tomorrow morning. Likewise, I'll also be posting the YouTube video, hopefully this evening. That always takes a little while to upload. So m.sussman95@gmail.com. Next month's meeting will still be a Zoom meeting. I'll be on August 20th at 7 p.m. We don't know who's doing the presentation or the topic yet, but we'll have that by the beginning of the month. And our photo challenge thing next month is going to be the sound of music. And as we always say, it's your interpretation of the sound of music. So that should be a fun one. And that's it. David, thanks again.
Thank you,
for
guys.
speaking.
Thank you.
I saw a couple more comments come through. If I can see them. I think I lost those last few comments. But thanks, everybody. Over there.
Good night.
Everybody have a
Bye.
great
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Great job, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.